Stop everything you are doing right now, because what I am about to walk you through is not the version somebody chopped up on a live stream. It is not the version somebody typed out with 2 thumbs and half the story missing. And it is absolutely not the sanitized bedtime story the Blueface fan pages are trying to spoon-feed the internet tonight. This is the raw tape. This is the uncut receipt. This is the story Blueface accidentally handed us on a silver platter when he stood in front of a live camera and confessed the entire playbook, and I promise you by the time we reach the last minute of this breakdown, you will never look at Blueface, Jaidyn Alexis, Chrisean Rock, or Wack 100 the same way again. I need every single person watching this to hear the words Blueface actually let leave his mouth, not the softened remix, not the fan translation, not the girlfriend-approved edit, not the group chat gossip version. This man stood in front of a camera, opened his lips, and laid out a philosophy so bold it should have made every woman within earshot pack a bag and rethink her entire calendar. According to Blueface himself, if a woman does something he does not care for, he can simply pivot, locate another woman, plant another baby, build another household, play house until the wheels fall off, and then rinse the entire cycle down the drain and begin again like nothing ever happened. He said that out loud. He said that with a straight face. He said it like a man reading a grocery list. And Jaidyn Alexis was sitting nearby smiling like the man just handed her a diamond ring instead of a public warning label. Sit up and catch this next part, because I am a woman who processes what she hears. I am a woman who watches the tape twice. I am a woman who rewinds, slows the footage down, and compares the audio to the caption. And I am a woman who cannot for the life of me figure out whether Jaidyn Alexis heard the exact same monologue the rest of us just heard. Jaidyn is walking around convinced she has won some invisible tournament. Jaidyn is walking around like the bag is secured, sealed, shipped, delivered, and signed for. And I am going to say what I always say, because I do not sugarcoat, I do not soften, I do not hedge. I do not personally like Jaidyn Alexis, and I do not have to pretend otherwise to make my point land. I cannot understand how Jaidyn Alexis can sit in the same room as Blueface knowing there are other children he will not tend to, other mothers he will not respect, and other headlines he will not answer for. And it does not register in Jaidyn's mind that the second he decides he has had enough, Jaidyn Alexis is going to be sitting in the exact same rocking chair Chrisean Rock is sitting in right now, holding a baby, holding a headline, and holding an empty bag. That is not a prediction. That is a forecast based on data Blueface himself broadcast to the entire internet. Before anybody rushes into my comment section swinging their keyboard, yes, I already know the paternity of Chrisean Jr. is technically still unresolved in some corners of the internet. Yes, I know some folks want to argue over whether the baby Jaidyn just delivered is even Blueface's baby. And here is the part that keeps getting swept under the rug, buried under the algorithm, and quietly deleted off the timeline. Jaidyn Alexis was reportedly involved with 3, possibly 4 different men in the same window of time. 3, possibly 4. And that is only the ones who publicly raised a hand and stepped into the light. Who is to say the number stops there? Who is to say the list is closed? Who is to say there are not 2 or 3 more men sitting at home right now waiting to see how this DNA saga plays out before they publicly weigh in? Because if I am being honest, and I always am, when I look at that infant I see features that do not point exclusively toward Blueface. I see eyes that carry a shape nobody has fully addressed. I see a nose the internet keeps pretending resembles one specific father when there is a whole lineup of possibilities standing in the shadows. Babies change. Babies morph. Babies rearrange their whole face inside the first year. Babies grow into their own genetics on a schedule none of us control. Anyone declaring with certainty that this baby belongs to the rapper is playing a guessing game dressed up in confidence, and I am not participating in that particular carnival. Have we not all sat on a couch and watched an episode of Maury? Have we not all watched a woman lean into the microphone and swear on everything she loves that the man beside her is the only possible father in the entire world? Have we not watched Judge Lauren Lake do the same paternity dance in her courtroom, asking the same question 5 different ways? Are you absolutely certain? Are you 100% sure? Is there any possibility of anyone else? And the woman answers with a straight face, no, 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 absolutely not. Only him. And then the envelope opens, the paper unfolds, the results are read aloud, and the whole studio watches the woman collapse into her own lie in front of a national audience. Same energy. Same script. Same result. Same choreography every single time. And when the judge asks the follow-up question, do you have any idea who else it could be? Suddenly the woman remembers a whole list of names she conveniently forgot at the start of the episode. If you knew a list existed, why did you sit in that chair and act like the list did not exist? That is not confusion. That is not a memory lapse. That is not stress-induced forgetfulness. That is calculation. That is deliberate omission. That is a game. Look, I sell honesty and I sell observation, and I am going to plant a friendly recommendation right here in the middle of this conversation because somebody needs to say it. Somebody out there needs to invent, market, and mass-produce what I am officially calling the situationship ledger. Print it. Bind it. Sell it on Amazon. Sell it at the corner store. Ship it worldwide. Because if a woman was reckless enough to juggle a whole rotation of partners once, that same woman is more than capable of running the same play again, and again, and again. And this man is walking around chest out, chin up, shoulders back, acting like he has personally located and secured the most trustworthy woman on the entire continent. Sir, you just severed ties with your longtime partner and her children because she allegedly stepped outside your relationship. You cut off Jaidyn Alexis's predecessor for the exact same behavior that Jaidyn Alexis has publicly been accused of. Yet somehow Jaidyn Alexis gets a pass, a house, a name on a birth certificate, a whole rebrand, and a promotion to head of household. That is not consistency. That is not principle. That is not standards. That is convenience dressed up as loyalty. Not one single person came forward publicly claiming Chrisean Rock's baby could belong to them. Not one. Chrisean Rock never had a lineup of alternate candidates. Chrisean Rock never had a chorus of alternate fathers stepping into interviews. Chrisean Rock never had a group chat full of possibilities. Yet Blueface disputes Chrisean Jr. with his full chest while accepting a completely different baby with almost no scrutiny at all. The audacity is loud on all of them. And I want the folks with limited common sense to sit with this next line and really let it marinate. There are millions of children on this planet whose features resemble people who are not their biological parents. Features are not evidence. Features are not DNA. Features are not paperwork. A nose is not a lab result. A pair of eyes is not a paternity affidavit. A chin is not a chromosome test. I have watched women stake their entire reputations on the shape of a baby's cheek, only to find out the baby's cheek belonged to somebody who lived 3 neighborhoods away and never even met the mother's official man. Anyway, let us keep it pushing, because when he started casually explaining his philosophy of starting over, I do not believe Jaidyn Alexis put herself in the category of women who could one day be replaced. Jaidyn Alexis is floating on a delusional cloud that has no landing pad. Jaidyn Alexis truly believes she is untouchable because she is currently living inside a house that has walls, doors, plumbing, and a working roof. That house is not a marriage. That house is not a guarantee. That house is not a permanent address. That house has a landlord, a lease, an expiration date, and an escape clause. Jaidyn Alexis keeps announcing her housing status like housing status is a wedding ring. Ma'am, having a roof does not equal having a future. Having a lease does not equal having loyalty. Having a baby does not equal having leverage. Having a birth certificate signed does not equal having a partner locked in for life. And nothing in the words he is speaking suggests Jaidyn Alexis is exempt from the pattern he just outlined on camera for the entire world to hear. Now I want to be careful and precise, because I do not throw accusations lightly. I am not saying Blueface pointed a finger at Jaidyn Alexis and threatened her directly. I am not saying he pointed a finger at Chrisean Rock and delivered a personal warning. I am saying he described a pattern. He described a template. He described a method he applies to relationships, and whether or not he intended to alert Jaidyn Alexis to the pattern, the alert was placed on the record. When a man opens his own mouth and lays out how he operates, believe him the first time. There is no need for a second demonstration. There is no need for a follow-up seminar. Just like Christian said, do not pray for me. You do not have the numbers to pray for me. And listen, I have not been in Chrisean Rock's corner since the moment that specific line left her mouth. But not defending Chrisean Rock does not mean defending Blueface. I am on the side of using both eyes. I am on the side of watching, listening, and comparing. That is my whole platform. That is my whole compass. That is my whole method. I am not sitting here trying to diagnose him. I am not trying to psychoanalyze him. I am not trying to guess what is or is not happening inside his mind. I am not qualified for that, and I have no interest in pretending otherwise. I am only doing what any reasonable adult with 2 working eyes would do. I am listening to the words leaving his mouth and matching those words to his behavior. How many households can a man wreck before he realizes the pattern is not the woman, the pattern is not the address, the pattern is not the timeline? The pattern is Blueface. He keeps hopping into new beginnings while carrying the same exact version of himself into every single one. He can trade women like trading cards at a table full of collectors, and the outcome will keep repeating on schedule because the constant in every equation is Blueface. That is the arithmetic. That is the receipt. That is the truth he refuses to acknowledge even when the whole world hands him a mirror. You can swap the woman. You can swap the house. You can swap the neighborhood. You can swap the relationship. You can swap the manager. You can swap the record label. You can add another child. You can add another headline. You can add another live stream. You can add another rebrand. But there is one person he cannot leave behind no matter how many contracts he signs, and that person is Blueface. That right there is the answer. That right there is the entire video in one sentence. That right there is the receipt every fan of his has been avoiding for 2 years straight. And now that we have named the constant, let us follow the timeline, because the timeline is where his story starts falling apart in real time and the cracks become impossible to ignore. Jaidyn Alexis reportedly delivered a baby recently. He still cannot definitively claim Chrisean Jr., so how in good conscience am I supposed to accept, without evidence, without paperwork, without independent verification, that this brand new baby is Blueface's biological child? Especially when this new baby's mother reportedly had a rotation of partners in the exact same window of conception. And I could have sworn a standard DNA panel actually asks the mother whether she has been intimate with anyone else within a specific recent window, and I believe that window is somewhere around 60 days. If I am off on the exact number, correct me in the comments. I welcome the correction, but the principle stands regardless. You are supposed to name every possibility. You are supposed to list every candidate. You are supposed to give the lab every variable so the science can do its job. And yet Jaidyn Alexis is behaving like the roster is empty and Blueface is the only entry on the entire clipboard. That is not how paternity math works. That is not how genetics work. That is not how honesty works. And Jaidyn Alexis had the boldness to go a step further. Jaidyn Alexis named the newborn after Blueface. Named the baby after the man whose paternity was never independently confirmed. Let that sentence sit in your ears for a full 10 seconds. I am going to extend the man a small piece of grace, because I try to be fair even to people I disagree with, because maybe he had baby fever. Maybe he wanted a fresh start. Maybe he was tired of being asked about Chrisean Rock in every interview. Maybe he wanted a public reset. But when I strip the grace away and just listen to his own conversations, the arithmetic still does not balance. He talks about everything. He films everything. He posts everything. He streams everything. But somehow the one thing Blueface does not consistently document is the very hygiene routine anyone would expect from a grown man of his standing. I do not see him stepping into a shower with the regularity a grown man's calendar should reflect. He shows us his money. He shows us his women. He shows us his opinions. He shows us his beefs. He does not show us the basics. That is my observation, and I am keeping it on the record. Blueface and Jaidyn Alexis broadcast their entire lives on a rotation. They broadcast their fights. They broadcast their reconciliations. They broadcast their household drama. They broadcast their financial flexes. They broadcast their vacations. They broadcast their arguments about who took what out of the fridge. But the questions the audience actually wants answered stay unanswered. Health status. Testing history. Basic accountability. Legal filings. Custody arrangements. Jaidyn Alexis will hop on a live stream with her chest half exposed and call it a personality, and I am not jealous. I am simply pointing out the pattern that has been consistent for months. If you do not like what I am saying, drop your disagreement in the comments and let us have the conversation like adults with functional brains. Keep it respectful. Keep it civil. Keep it clean. And if I do not feel like engaging that day, I know how to scroll past the noise the same way I expect you to scroll past mine. But I cannot understand the paternity theater we have been forced to sit through for months on end. Anyone who has watched this saga knows the paternity storyline was dragged out across multiple live streams, multiple public arguments, multiple contradictory statements, and multiple deleted posts. And in the middle of all that chaos, the rapper names the newborn after himself. That is not the move of a cautious man. That is not the move of a strategic man. That is not the move of a man waiting on lab results. That is the move of a man who has already decided the outcome regardless of the evidence. If the DNA question was still genuinely open, why is he stamping his name on the birth certificate like the answer was locked and delivered by certified mail? Wack 100 previously stated on record that the DNA process was signed off on. Wack 100's words. Not mine. Then after the baby comes home, we watch the couple conduct an at-home DNA test on a live stream. Two separate DNA narratives. Both cannot be simultaneously true. Somebody is lying, and I am going to figure out who. Now I want to be honest about my own limits, because self-awareness matters. I am not claiming to be the smartest person in the room, but I know inconsistency when I see it, and I know theater when I see it. If the paperwork was already signed off on, and if the results were already confirmed, why is a second test happening on camera? Why is a second swab happening in a bedroom? Why is the ceremony being re-performed for the audience? Why is the entire process being staged like a reality television scene? Big appreciation to a viewer in the comments named Mandy1974, because Mandy1974 flagged something I initially missed on my first pass through the footage. And a viewer named Sharon also flagged something crucial that changed how I looked at the entire storyline. These two viewers essentially did the research the couple should have done publicly. Hospitals in California, as a matter of policy, do not perform paternity DNA tests on newborns during the standard delivery process. If you doubt me, look it up yourself. Do not take my word for it. Verify independently. So when Wack 100 claimed the DNA test was completed and signed off on inside the hospital, that claim collides directly with California hospital policy and cannot both be true. So why did the couple not simply walk into an accredited independent DNA testing facility, submit their swabs to a neutral third party, and let a licensed technician handle the entire chain of custody the way any responsible couple would? Why did they choose the bedroom, the live stream, and the mail-in kit? Why did they choose the version of the process that offers the least accountability? Because when you swab each other in front of a camera, with no third party present, with no lab technician documenting the process, with no chain of custody protocol, with no witness signatures, the entire test becomes theater. Pure theater. Who is to say Jaidyn Alexis did not carefully swap her own sample with his sample before mailing anything anywhere? I know some of you are already typing that a lab would catch the mismatch through chromosomal markers. Fair. Very possibly. But the fact that we even have to raise this question tells you everything about the credibility gap this couple has created for themselves. When you play these games in front of a live audience, you invite the entire audience to question everything you do next. That right there don't add up. And that tells us one of two things. Either these two are actively deceiving their audience, or these two are so hungry for engagement that they will manufacture drama around a real living baby just to keep the algorithm fed. Either option is disqualifying. Either option is disgraceful. You cannot claim to hold moral high ground over Chrisean Rock while running the exact same content playbook Chrisean Rock is being criticized for. Chrisean Rock kept Chrisean Jr. in front of the camera to keep the numbers running. Blueface and Jaidyn Alexis are doing the exact same thing with a different newborn. Same monetization strategy. Same exploitation of a child. Same lack of privacy for a person who cannot yet consent to being on camera. So before anyone in Team Jaidyn opens their mouth to criticize Chrisean Rock, check your own team's playbook first, then get back to me. Listen carefully. I am not standing here declaring that anyone specifically swapped a DNA sample on that live stream. I was not in the room. I did not have my own camera in the corner. I did not have a lab technician on speed dial. I am not turning a suspicion into a fact, and I am not going to. But viewers are supposed to notice things. Viewers are supposed to compare footage across timestamps. Viewers are supposed to ask questions that make the storytellers uncomfortable. And viewers noticed that the camera angle shifted during the on-camera swab in a way that has not been publicly explained. I am not going to name the exact second. I am not going to force a conclusion on anyone. I am just placing the observation on the record because that is my job as a commentator, and that is your job as an observant audience. Here is another question worth chewing on for a moment. Naming a child after a man before that man's paternity is independently verified is a curious move for a couple that claims to be strategic. Legally, parents can name their children anything they want. Nobody is disputing the legal right. But strategically, publicly, and narratively, stamping a father's name on a birth certificate before the science confirms the father is a bold gamble on both sides. And the couple has been discussing paternity, arguing over paternity, and monetizing paternity for 8 months straight. 8 months. And after all that content, all that speculation, all that drama, all that live stream footage, no clean, verifiable, third-party DNA test has been produced. But this same couple wants to walk into the comments and question Chrisean Jr.'s paternity as if their own house is transparent. Their house is not transparent. Their house has curtains, tinted windows, a locked door, a security system, and a no trespassing sign. Features are not DNA. Say it with me one more time. Features are not DNA. A nose is not a blood test. A pair of eyes is not a chromosome report. A dimple is not a genome. A birthmark is not a signature. Some of you are out here running paternity trials in your comment section based on a single baby picture from a bad angle. Pick a lane. And while we are picking lanes, I need to bring back a conversation that has been circulating and getting quietly buried by the algorithm. The government assistance conversation. I am not standing here officially accusing Jaidyn Alexis of committing any specific act of fraud. I am not in Jaidyn Alexis's kitchen. I am not in Jaidyn Alexis's bank account. I am not in Jaidyn Alexis's mailbox. I do not have access to Jaidyn Alexis's tax filings. But I am not blind either, and I am not going to pretend to be. Anyone in this country who has ever applied for government assistance knows the eligibility rules are strict and unforgiving. Income thresholds exist for a reason. Household size is factored in. Reported earnings must line up with what you spend. Assets are considered. Vehicle values are considered. And I say this from personal lived experience, not from theory. If your income even slightly exceeds a specific bracket, you can be denied Medicaid outright and left without coverage. I have seen $500 extra in a single paycheck disqualify a working parent from coverage for an entire calendar year. So how does Jaidyn Alexis stand on a live stream, brag about her partner's cash flow, wave around receipts for luxury purchases, discuss weekly earnings in the tens of thousands, drop cash on designer bags, and simultaneously benefit from any tier of government assistance? Those two realities cannot occupy the same address. Those two realities cannot exist in the same tax bracket. If the reported income does not match the observed lifestyle, questions are going to get asked. And I am asking. Loudly. Publicly. On the record. I have half a mind to draft a petition and start collecting signatures because working families across this country are being denied basic health coverage while millionaires pretending to be paupers are gaming the system for clout. That is not a partisan take. That is not a political stunt. That is not right versus left. That is just fairness. That is just fundamental equity. Now, on the birth certificate question. If Blueface wants to voluntarily sign his name to a legally binding document tying him permanently to a baby whose paternity has not been independently confirmed, that is his choice to make as an adult. But the moment the two of them separate and history strongly suggests that day is on the calendar, Blueface is legally on the hook for child support for the next 18 years minimum. If he fails to pay child support, he is going to jail. Not live stream jail. Not clout jail. Actual physical jail with bars and a bunk. And if he is willing to gamble like that, then I am willing to watch the poker game unfold in real time from the safety of my sofa. But none of this behavior aligns with the intellectual arrogance he projects online. He calls himself logical. He calls himself analytical. He calls himself a strategist. He behaves like a man who has never read the fine print on any legal document he has ever signed in his life. For a couple that constantly announces how smart they are, how ahead of the game they are, and how much everybody else is missing, these two keep moving backward in the standings on every single metric that matters. And Blueface, respectfully, close your mouth for a full news cycle and give the rest of us a break. Nothing he says holds up under review. Nothing he publishes survives 10 minutes of scrutiny. He may sound convincing to a listener who has no baseline for logic, but a listener with basic reading comprehension can hear the contradictions inside every third sentence. Until the next chapter of this saga drops in our laps, watch the packaging on that home DNA kit and see if it matches any accredited brand. Watch the government assistance conversation and see who else picks it up. Watch him explain, again, how easy it is to trade one woman for the next like they are cars on a used lot. And ask yourself honestly whether the words leaving his mouth sound like the wisdom of a man who has figured life out or the improvisation of a man who has never stopped running from his own reflection. If any of this is the philosophy of a self-declared genius, then everyone standing in his cheering section is standing on quicksand that is already up to their knees. Blueface is not the architect he believes he is. Jaidyn Alexis is not the champion Jaidyn Alexis believes she is. Wack 100 is not the referee Wack 100 believes he is. And the baby, that innocent child, is the only party in this entire circus who deserves the truth, the paperwork, and the peace. Get the baby a real test at a real facility. Get the baby a real father, whoever that turns out to be, whether that father is Blueface or somebody else entirely. Get the baby a real chance at a real life outside the live stream. And spare all of us the theater. The live stream can wait. The comments can wait. The clout can wait. The child cannot wait, because that child is growing up on camera whether that child agreed to it or not. I want you to remember one thing before we close this out. When a person tells you exactly how they operate, believe them the first time they say it. Blueface told us. He described the pattern. He admitted the exit strategy. He confessed to the rerun. He handed us the blueprint on a live stream and expected us to applaud. And every woman standing near him right now has been officially notified in advance. Whether Jaidyn Alexis absorbs the notification or laughs it off is Jaidyn Alexis's decision to make. Whether the next woman on his rotation takes notes is her decision to make too. But nobody in the audience gets to pretend the warning was never issued. The warning was issued in his own voice, on his own platform, in his own timeline. And we all pressed play. Every single one of us. Which means we are all witnesses now, and witnesses do not get to claim ignorance later. So drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know where you stand. Tell me whether Jaidyn Alexis is going to end up sitting exactly where Chrisean Rock is sitting now within the next 12 months. Tell me whether that home DNA kit was legitimate or a piece of theater. Tell me whether the EBT conversation deserves a full independent investigation. Tell me whether Blueface is a philosopher or just a man who talks fast enough that people forget to think while he is talking. And tell me who the next woman on his rotation is going to be, because if the pattern holds, that woman is already somewhere out there right now, unaware, unbothered, unwarned, and next in line. Big appreciation to everyone who watches, comments, subscribes, and keeps this community sharp. You are the reason this platform continues to grow. You are the reason this conversation stays alive. You are the reason the truth gets a fair hearing even when the algorithm tries to bury it. Until we link again, keep both eyes wide, keep both ears open, keep your receipts organized, and keep your common sense somewhere close. That is how we survive the noise. That is how we outlast the theater. That is how we finally see the truth walk through the door on its own 2 feet, sit down at the table, and speak for itself without needing anyone else to translate. Now let me pull all of you back into a moment that has been quietly haunting this entire storyline, because there is a specific detail nobody in the mainstream commentary community is stress testing the way it deserves. When Blueface first started describing the ease of starting over, he did not deliver that speech in a moment of emotional overwhelm. He did not deliver it during a breakup. He did not deliver it in a courtroom. He delivered it calmly, casually, and without any prompting, which tells me the philosophy is not reactive. The philosophy is baked in. The philosophy is default. The philosophy is the operating system he runs on, and every relationship he enters is simply the current application loaded on top of that same system. So when Jaidyn Alexis sits there smiling as he explains this, Jaidyn Alexis is not receiving a warning about future behavior. Jaidyn Alexis is receiving a description of behavior already in progress. Read that again. That distinction matters. That distinction is everything. And here is another dimension of this saga nobody is centering enough. The children. The actual children. Chrisean Jr. is a real human being. The baby Jaidyn Alexis just delivered is a real human being. And whatever babies come next in his rotation will also be real human beings. These children did not sign up for a live stream childhood. These children did not sign up to have their paternity debated in comment sections. These children did not sign up to become monetized content. These children did not sign up to have their DNA discussed by strangers on the internet. And yet here we are, 5 live streams deep, 12 arguments deep, 8 months deep, and the adults responsible for these children are still treating the entire situation like a reality television plotline. That is the part that stays with me long after the live stream ends. That is the part one cannot shake off. That is the part that turns this from gossip into something closer to a public interest issue. Let me also address something a lot of you have been asking me privately, because you deserve a direct answer. People have been messaging me asking why I keep coming back to this Blueface storyline when there are 100 other topics I could cover. The answer is simple. This saga is a case study. This saga is a masterclass in what happens when people confuse visibility with wisdom, when people confuse followers with credibility, when people confuse loudness with intelligence. The rapper has become a walking demonstration of how the internet rewards confidence over competence. Jaidyn Alexis has become a walking demonstration of how women can talk themselves into accepting the unacceptable in exchange for temporary comfort. And Wack 100 has become a walking demonstration of how enablers keep the cycle spinning by providing cover instead of correction. Every one of these figures is a lesson. Every one of these figures is a warning. And every one of these figures is teaching us something whether they intend to or not. Now I want to circle back to the Chrisean Rock parallel one more time, because I know some of you are ready to defend Chrisean Rock as a mother who is doing her best. Fine. I am not here to demolish Chrisean Rock personally. I am here to point out that Chrisean Rock and Jaidyn Alexis are effectively mirror images, separated by a few months on the calendar. Chrisean Rock was the previous Jaidyn Alexis. Jaidyn Alexis is the current Chrisean Rock. And whoever comes next will be the future Jaidyn Alexis. The seat rotates. The name changes. The costume gets updated. But the chair, the room, the storyline, and the outcome stay identical. Blueface is running a franchise, and every new relationship is just another franchise location with fresh signage over the same building. If you cannot see the franchise, you are not paying attention. If you can see the franchise and still cheer for it, that is a decision you are going to have to explain to yourself later. And let us not forget the manager class in all of this. Wack 100 is not an innocent bystander. Wack 100 is a public figure with a large platform and significant industry pull. When Wack 100 goes on record about DNA tests, when Wack 100 makes claims about hospital procedures, when Wack 100 frames Jaidyn Alexis as cooperative and reasonable, Wack 100 is actively shaping public perception of a paternity dispute involving an infant. That is a responsibility. That is a weight. That is not something anyone in that position should be carrying loosely. And if the facts Wack 100 publicly stated do not survive a 5-minute policy check against California hospital procedures, then Wack 100 owes the public a correction, a clarification, or a retraction. Silence is not an option when a child's paternity narrative is being written in real time by adults who should know better. And before you close this window and move on with your evening, take one more minute with me, because I want to leave you with a challenge that goes beyond Blueface, beyond Jaidyn Alexis, beyond Chrisean Rock, and beyond every headline attached to this whole saga. Look around your own life. Look at the patterns you have been ignoring in your own household. Look at the warnings you have been receiving from the people closest to you. Look at the man or the woman standing next to you who has already told you, in words or in actions, exactly how they intend to operate. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you taking notes? Because the same instinct that lets us spot the pattern from a live stream should let us spot the smaller versions of that same pattern inside our own front doors. That is the real lesson here. That is the real takeaway. That is the reason I sit down and record these videos in the first place. Not to tear anybody apart, but to sharpen your eye, tune your ear, and keep your common sense right where it belongs. Right on the front porch. Right where nobody can steal it. Right where nobody can talk you out of it. Until we link again, stay ready, stay watchful, and stay you.